So help me God. So help me God.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I pray heaven to bestow the best of blessings on this house and all that shall hereafter inhabit it. May none but honest and wise men ever rule under this roof. The words that you just heard are taken from a letter written to Abigail Adams from the President's house by the second President of the United States, John Adams, in 1800 after he was moved in. These words were later engraved on the mantle in 1945 during the administration of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. My name is Rob Lee, and welcome to So Help Me Pod, a podcast concerned with the presidency and the theological moorings surrounding the presidency. One of the most iconic structures of the whole United States of America stands as a representative of the American presidency. The White House in Washington, D.C. has captivated the nation and the world's imagination in literature, television, and film. I thought in today's bonus episode we might look into what the White House represents and how it stands as emblematic of the highest office in the land. The White House is the official residence and working space of the United States presidency, having held that designation since 1800. Every president, with the exception of George Washington, has occupied the People's House. That said, President Washington would know the intent of the President's House as construction began in October 1792. The White House would be built largely by enslaved individuals and paid European immigrants. And the President was originally to call his house the President's Palace or the President's Mansion. But by 1800, it was being referred to as the White House. John Adams would be the first president to occupy the White House. He would do so beginning towards the end of his tenure on November 1st, 1800, and he would later inscribe that letter that would be inscribed on the fireplace. It would be set a standard for the presidency that the president lived in Washington, D.C. and governed from that space. The house is located on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in the District of Columbia and was originally designed by James Hoban in a neoclassical style. The mansion would be sacked and burned by British forces invading during the War of 1812. The house would also go under significant renovations, including an entire interior rebuild during the Truman years. In 1901, President Theodore Roosevelt would place the official office of the president in the newly built West Wing, which included the first Oval Office. The East Wing of the White House holds now the offices of the First Lady and other governmental agencies that are required under the executive branch. After Franklin Roosevelt died in 1945, it was recognized that the White House was not only in disrepair, but in imminent danger of collapsing from the inside. President Harry Truman, the nation's 33rd president, would live in the Blair House across the street from the White House from 1949 to 1951 as the White House underwent significant reconstructive efforts. Jackie Kennedy, the First Lady during John F. Kennedy's administration, would direct a tasteful and historic restoration of the White House to bring together a collection of the White House artifacts and artworks from years gone by. By the time Jackie Kennedy left the First Ladyship in 1963, it was a more historically authentic place than it had been since the turn of the 1900s. The Rose Garden and the Jackie Kennedy Garden would also become national staples during that time. Computers and the first laser printer would be added to the White House in the Carter administration, and computer and technology would greatly be proliferated in the years that followed. And the president, don't worry, is well guarded in the house, one of the most guarded houses in the entire world. Many of the security capabilities were classified and are classified to this day, but we do know things like since 2005, there's been a Norwegian advanced surface-to-air missile system to protect the edifice and its occupants from airplane and air attack. Snipers also occupy the top of the building, and of course the building is protected by the United States Secret Service. Weddings from President Grover Cleveland's to President Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon's daughters have held weddings in the White House or on the White House grounds. Funeral rites from Lincoln's to Franklin Roosevelt's have been offered within the walls. While FDR really enjoyed a swimming pool that gave him more mobility than he ever had without it, other presidents would enjoy things as well, such as a 42-seat movie theater that is also part of the house's layout. Traditionally, movie studios have made their films available to film in the White House to screen at no charge upon the president's request. The White House Situation Room is the intelligence and defense coordination facility of the White House. It's not really just a room, it's actually a 5,000 square foot center run by the National Security Council. It can control the United States military movement and security forces around the world. It received an upgrade and uplift as recently as 2023. The Situation Room became iconicized in the American imagination after the September 11th attacks, where Vice President Dick Cheney stood as a bastion of force as the president was in air on Air Force One and hard to reach. He offered instruction and directive in a lack of connection with President Bush, and this would become a moment of great scrutiny in subsequent years by commissions and other outlets. The White House, including the President's office called the Oval Office, are decorated each administration within reason. The President will choose artwork and decorations from the National Archives. The White House has many events throughout the year, including Christmas parties, religious observances for a variety of faiths, and the iconic Easter egg roll. In April 2022, at the invitation of First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, my family and I were guests of the President and First Lady at the Easter egg roll. To stand that close to the White House, to peer into the Oval Office from the Rose Garden, is a memory that I will never, ever, ever forget. It was a moment that I cherish. We got to meet President Biden. We got to meet the First Lady. We got to hear a story read by Jimmy Fallon. But more importantly, we got to see this amazing piece of American history, the White House, stand in all its glory. And we were the first Easter egg roll to be held after the COVID-19 pandemic, which was also a great gift too. And we can't forget in all of this that the White House has been immortalized in film and television, including Aaron Sorkin's The West Wing, the 2013 film White House Down, and the 1996 film where the White House met an untimely and unfortunate end, Independence Day. That's just to name a few. There's plenty of other films that feature and talk about the White House and its legacy in American history. Few other buildings are well known in the world at large. It stands as a tourist destination. It stands as a defense readiness center. It stands as a center of power by which the nation is governed. It is the people's house. It is known as the White House, and it's a landmark on the landscape of American history.
You've been listening to So Help Me Pod, a podcast of Beloved Journal in conjunction with Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley, California. The podcast is offered in partial completion of the Doctor of Ministry degree for the Reverend Robert W. Lee. All opinions and insights offered are solely owned by that of those who offered them and do not reflect the views of stakeholders in the project. There have been 45 men and 46 presidential administrations, all of them unique. Some of them have been more interesting than others, some of them more terrifying than others. All have been part of the grand expression of democracy on the North American continent and part of the wider conversation of self-governance in the world. These men have failed profoundly, and we have failed profoundly in following their leadership along with our own sometimes antiquated and backwards ways of viewing and acting in the world. That said, this form of leadership is unlike few other, and the greatest gift we have has been given in the ways in which the American experiment continues to prosper despite our terrible misgivings. We are better off because of these men, and we are forever in their debt. For more information, visit www.roblee4.com/presidents.